In this video, we're going to spend a few minutes talking about the engineering notebook, or at least our version, the version of the engineering notebook we're going to use in this class. We're going to cover the following things. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about what an engineering notebook is, why it's important, a few rules that I want you to follow on an engineering notebook, and then we'll give you a few examples. I'm not real happy with these examples, but I'm hoping that the picture can give you some ideas on how you can record information in your engineering notebooks. So first of all, what is an engineering notebook? So I don't particularly care for the term engineering notebook because I think of it more as a notebook. It turns out that typically engineers and scientists use these quite a bit. However, after working at Boeing for almost 35 years, there's a lot of people who are not engineers who use notebooks to record what they have done in their day-to-day work. Engineering is okay in the sense that we're going to be recording our design and development and activities that we do to build robots. But I think of this more as a notebook than I think of it as something specific to engineering. However, what the notebook is a living record of the progress that you've made each day as you're putting together your robot. It will capture what you have done that day and be something that you can go back and look at in the future to say, I thought I did this a few days ago, and when was that? And you can go back and realize that, last Friday you worked on this thing, and now it's Wednesday, and you're trying to figure out where you were at. The engineering notebooks are also things that engineers and scientists use as professional documentation of their efforts. Including, if they're properly witnessed, a legal document if they were trying to apply for a patent. You may have heard comments about so-and-so, some important engineer, scientist, thinker of some kind, had some notes that they had taken, and we go back and study those notes later on and realize what they were evaluating, testing, thinking about, and all those kind of things. So these are significant records, and I have used them when I was at Boeing. I carried around a notebook all the time. I would take notes in there on things I should be working on things that other people were working on, or even recording things that may be something about, some general activity that was going on in Boeing that I needed to be aware of. So writing this down, having a record of it, is the primary reason that we put a notebook together. It's a documentation of the daily progress on your project. You may have a particular day that you're working on some part of the project, and you get to the point where you are halfway through with, let's say, putting the wheels on your robot. So, you're going to write down, I got the front wheels on, I got to put the Omni wheels on the back. That's a simple statement, but it records what you did on your project on that particular day. The fact that you record what you've done may seem pretty obvious to you. Well, geez, I was here and I did this stuff. So why in the world do I need to write it down? Well, the reason to write it down is a couple-fold. First of all, a week from now or 3 or 4 days from now, you may forget where you are. Uh, and secondly, and more important is this is a way that we can communicate among team members. We've had this happen already. We had one individual who was absent on day one, and his team partner was there and working on a robot. The next day, the team partner was absent, and the first team member came back. So the first team member didn't know what had gone on the day before. There was nothing that he could go to and say, what did we get accomplished yesterday, and where do I need to pick up and start working on things today? Communication among team members is an important part of the notebook and the reason we write this stuff down. Now, the notebook is not just something that is used to record what you have done, what's gone on in the past. The notebook is also something that records what the next steps in the project need to be. So, for example, you're building the robot. You've got the chassis put together, and the wheels are all on. And the next step is putting the electronics on. So, you make a note. Finished assembling the chassis. Next step is to get the electronic components and put them on the robot. There can be kind of a tendency to be vague in what these next steps, what these next tasks are. So as you're putting them down, I want you to think of something that can be done in one period. For example, don't write down, I need to finish the robot. That's not clear enough. Clearly that's something that has to happen, but what's the next thing you're going to do to finish that robot? Now, as you're going along, the amount of time that these tasks will take could reduce in size. In other words, if you're installing software, you've never done that before, it may take a whole period to get that software loaded onto your phone. However, after you've done that a few times, it'll probably take you 10 seconds to get it done. So as you go through the semester and as you go through the year here, the amount of tasks that you can get done in one period will grow. But keep the one period idea in mind as you're writing it down. So you may write down things that, tomorrow I need to do this, and the following day I'm going to do that, and the next day I'm going to do this. That's okay. Because it gives you a map, it gives you an order in which you're planning to do things, and that way you and your partner, your team member will know what's going on. The other reason for doing this and why it's important is we're trying to educate you on the importance of keeping records. This is how people in industry record their progress and put their to-do lists. So this is an important skill to have. The extent to which you use it will depend on the type of job you get into, but in a lot of jobs, this kind of an idea needs to exist, whether it's being used today or not, but this kind of an idea needs to exist. So that's why the notebook is important. Now, we've got some rules for the engineering notebook, and these are, I want you to write in complete sentences. Please be sure that you don't say something that not only is the sentence complete, but that it communicates well. So don't say something like, I got it done. That doesn't tell me what you actually did. I got the motors installed on the robot and the wheels installed on the motors. That tells me what you got done. Sometimes it's pretty hard to explain things in text. So using pictures, diagrams, is a great way to be able to communicate these ideas and to show you the progress. Assume when you're writing things down in your notebook that you're explaining something to your fifth grade brother or sister. They don't know much about robotics. They have got a limited, in some of the technology terms that we use, they've got a limited understanding of some of those technology terms. I'm not asking you to explain them in great detail, but I want you to be thinking about how would they understand the information that you're writing down. And do you need to put a little bit of extra explanation in there so that they would understand it? This idea and the complete sentence idea is what we're looking for as we see these notes in the engineering notebook. The other thing is start a fresh page every day and put the date on the page. It's going to waste a little bit of paper in your notebook, but that's okay. It gives you a good way to be able to go backwards and in time and sort out what you were doing on each individual day. Now, some more on rules. The daily write-up should include what you accomplished for that particular day. It should have some kind of a reflection on what those accomplishments were in terms of any problems that you ran into. So you were trying to put the electronics on, but you realized at the end of the day that the color sensor is too far away from the floor. So you're gonna have to go back and change that. Or you put the color sensor on there and the lead on the color sensor wouldn't reach the core interface device. So you've got to get an extension cable to go in there, something like that. So if there was anything in particular that you learned or that you need to work on, write that down in the reflections. And then also, like we've already mentioned here, be sure and write down the tasks for tomorrow and beyond, and try to keep those tasks so that they're crisp and they can be done in one period. I don't want just one team member to be the person that's making all the entries in the engineering notebook. You want to switch that off. It's okay to have one team member make the entries for a particular day, and then the next day have the other team member make the entries, or switch it off. I'm not saying every other day, but I don't want one individual to be responsible for making engineering notebook entries. Everyone on the team is responsible for making those, and I expect everyone on the team to be doing those entries on kind of a rotating rotating basis. Please put your team number on the outside of your notebook, and then put that notebook in your blue box. That way, when you start the day, the notebook will be right on the top. You can pull it out, see what you need to do, get off and working on stuff for that day. At the end of the day, make your notes in the engineering notebook, put that back on the top of the blue box, put the top on, and you're good to go for the next day. Now, here's some examples of engineering notebooks, and these are, like I said before, these are going to give you some ideas. I'm not real happy with these examples, but they were the best we could come up with. If you want to put profiles in your notebook, you certainly can. If you're coming to the robotics class from the standpoint of an FRC or FTC, the off-hours robotics programs here at school, then you'll know that this is something standard that we do. I'm not particularly interested one way or the other whether you do this in your engineering notebook for this class, but wanted to give you an example of it. Now, here's some things that are the an example of daily work sessions. And what I wanted to point out here was look at the fact that there's some notes here on programming, there's some notes on design, and you can see that they're thinking about the whole robot. At the early stages of this class, you may not be thinking about the whole robot because, for example, in the early stages, we have not done any programming, so you wouldn't have those kind of notes. But a key thing is that the design of the robot is including everything that we're putting together here. It'll include the electronics. It'll include the mechanical parts. It'll include the programming parts and so forth. We've already mentioned pictures are a great way to illustrate something that is hard to explain in text. Feel free to take a picture, maybe email it to yourself at school and print it out, scotch tape it in your notebook, and that'll cut down on a lot of writing, plus is a great communication tool. CAD is something that we'll get to throughout the year here. If you have a CAD drawing, then feel free to put that in to help communicate what's going on with the robot or with the robot design. The engineering notebook is not, its purpose is not to just record all the things that worked right. Its purpose is also to record some of the things that maybe didn't work quite so well. So be sure and record the lessons learned as you're going through the recording process. You may have something that you tried. You wanted to come up with a arm that would lift a field element piece, lift something up. You built that arm. It worked, meaning it moved, but when you actually tried to lift the piece, it wasn't strong enough. It couldn't lift the piece of material that you needed to lift, or it couldn't get it high enough, or whatever else. So all of those are things that you can write down as lessons learned. The things that didn't work are just as important as the things that did work. Now, the last thing we'll talk about in the engineering notebook is your code. Once you get a part of your program working, you can print out that code and put it in your notebook. This will be a historical record of how your code progressed through the development. And it will also be a way that you can go back and look at what your code, how your code was formulated in the past, because sometimes what'll come up is your robot's going to stop working and you're not going to know why. But if you go back and look at your code that you put in your engineering notebook, compare that to the code that you actually have in the computer now, you can very easily find that something changed. It may have changed inadvertently. It may have changed because we were trying something and we forgot to change it back. There could be a whole host of reasons why something got changed, but this will be a diagnostic tool for you so that you can go back and understand what changed and how to fix it so that you can keep on going. That's our summary of the engineering notebook and what we're looking for there. It's a useful tool, but it's going to be one of those tools that you're not really going to understand why it's useful until you put some effort in developing a good notebook, and then down the road you can see, oh yeah, I bet you I wrote that down in my engineering notebook, so let me go back and look at that, and then you can answer your question and be off, and you just save yourself maybe 20-30 minutes of trying to figure out what you actually did. So recommend you put this together. We're building an abbreviated version of the engineering notebook specifically so that we can give you some experience with it and allow you to get the benefits of recording some of this important information. Thank you.